Hey, it's Byron Morrison here, and I'm so excited to have you here for this training on how to effectively plan and structure your days, weeks, and months so you can boost productivity and performance. This is one of my absolutely favorite things to teach, and that's why I'm so excited to be sharing this with you, because this is a tool that I use every single day myself, and it's something that I use with all of my private clients as well. As an example, a guy recently came to me at a point where between all the putting out fires, solving other people's problems, and dealing with a never ending list of demands, he felt like there was never enough minutes in the day to get everything done. And because of it, he was nowhere near as productive or as effective as he needed to be to lead his business. I took him through this process, and after a couple of weeks of using it, he said to me that it was a complete game changer for how he approached his day and managed his time. Another client that I took us through got to the point where he was getting more done in a day than he used to in an entire week. And another went from drowning in things to do, feeling overwhelmed by everything that needed to be done, to being able to take back control of his time. And not only that, finally set aside time to focus on his family and other areas of his life so that he could build his business without sacrificing the things that mattered most. So, a few things just to note before we dive into this training. This is a process that I've put together over the last few years, from studying performance and productivity and really understanding and testing and refining it along the way to figure out what worked best for me. So, with that being said, I don't believe in one size fits all approaches. So I really encourage you to go into this with the mindset of looking at how you can take what I'm going to teach you, really test it and figure out what works best for you. Because everyone's different, and depending on your routine and your schedule and your day to day activities, there may be things that massively help, and there may be things that you may need to really change up a little bit to get the most out of them. So bear that in mind. You don't have to follow it exactly the way that I do it, but I'm going to give you the best practice that I found really is effective in getting things done. Also, with this training as well, I'm going to go really detailed on this because I want to make sure that you get as much out of this as possible. So it may take a little bit longer, but with that being said, I don't want you to think that planning and really structuring your days has to be this huge, overwhelming task. Because whenever I first show someone the spreadsheet that I'm going to share with you shortly, they do feel like at first, oh, there's so many different things to look at. There's so many things to think about. Whereas actually, once you start getting into the routine of going through it, it's very, very simple and it's to the point, and it helps massively in setting you up for your days ahead. So just bear that in mind as we go through it, that as with everything else, it is going to take some getting used to so that you could properly and effectively put it into action. To start with, though, also as a bonus tip as well, I want to take a moment and talk to you about how to properly prioritize and think of what you need to be focusing on. Because one of the biggest problems that people come to me with is they have these completely scattered thoughts with so many things going through their head of all of these things that need to get done that they don't know what to focus on or to prioritize on. And that's why before you dive into this training, what I really want to encourage you to do is get a pen and paper and make a complete list of everything that you're focusing on right now. What needs to get done? What's top of mind? What are your biggest priorities? And also, what have you been working on recently? Think back over the last week or two over the tasks that you've been giving your time to and putting energy into. And from there, I want you to go through it and be brutally honest. What on that list has to be done by you? What is playing into your strengths, your superpowers? What is going to be driving your business forward? And from there, what could be done by someone else? What is a waste of time? What needs to be delegated? And what needs to be outsourced? Now, the reason why this is so important to do first is we have to get you to start auditing your time, because so many people I speak to try and do everything. And because of it, they stretch themselves thin. And that's why they feel like there's not enough minutes in the day. Whereas they don't have a time problem, they actually have an effectiveness problem because they're trying to do too much. I went through this exercise with a client recently, and we broke down his to-do list and everything that needed to be done and what he was focusing on. And by the end of going through it, we managed to reduce over 50% what was on that list just by figuring out, okay, this needed to be delegated to his CFO, to his assistant, and other members of his team. Remember, running a business and being a leader is all about surrounding yourself with the people who are going to actually make your life easier. It's not about you trying to do everything yourself. And on the other side of that as well, it's also going through and being brutally honest. What tasks and actions aren't pulling you forward? What is busy work? What has a negative ROI, not just financially, but in time? And what do you need to stop wasting time on? Because we all have those things in our life where we think it's important and we keep doing it over and over again. And it's only when we really sit down and we honestly look at it, we figure out, actually, is this the best use of your time? Is this really pushing you forward towards your goals? If you can go into your planning and structure with that mentality of breaking down and removing anything that isn't adding to your life, this is going to be so much easier. And like I said before, that one client that I took it through, we took 50% off of his workload in 10 minutes of going through this, simply by just being brutal of what needed to be done by him, what should be delegated and outsourced, and what was simply a waste of time. So with that being said, that's how I want you to go through and prioritize and really figure out what you need to focus on. And now let's dive into it. So you'll see in the spreadsheet that I use for all of my planning, and as a bonus, using the button below this video, you can actually download a copy of what I'm taking you through so you can use this yourself. It's split down into 4 key tabs: your month, your week, your day, and then a weekly review. So I'm going to take you through each of those tabs. I'm going to show you how I personally would fill it out, and then you can know how to do it yourself. So just as kind of like an overview of planning, this is one of those things that we all know that we should be doing, but you'd be amazed at how many people I speak to who are running businesses or in executive leader positions, who beyond having a to-do list and scheduled appointments, have no plan or structure for what they need to get done. And because of it, they're always bouncing around from one task to the next and essentially running around like a headless chicken, trying to figure out what they're doing, which may be fine for your average person who just has a to-do list and just picks what they feel like focusing on. But if you're someone who wants to make an impact, who wants to build an incredible business and do something that matters, you can't afford to be wasting time on things that don't matter. You have to be effective, which comes down to being massively intentional with your time and ensuring that you're making the best use of the time that you have available. So this is why we need to start looking firstly at your month overview, because when most people approach planning, they think of it in the way of, what do I need to get done this week? Or what do I have to focus on today? Which is a fine starting point, but I like to take more of a macro bird's eye view picture, and from there, then break it down on a micro level into more manageable chunks. And that's why on one of the final weekend of the month, I always sit down and I break down what is top of mind that needs to be kept in my view for the month ahead. So when I talk about planning your month in advance, we're not planning every single day. That's not going to be possible. Instead, what I want to get you to do is have a look. What are the big events or occasions or appointments that you have that you need to keep top of mind? For instance, say on this day, it might be someone's birthday. Maybe on these days, you're going away on holiday. Maybe on like this day, you have a big board meeting. So this is all about keeping it top of mind in the way that you can, from there, not get blindsided from it. Because so often people kind of go into their months where they'll know, okay, I've got something in the future. I don't need to think about it now. It'll get to a few days before, and then they'll panic or be, oh, I'm unprepared. I haven't been working on this. I haven't been focusing on it. which is why if you can keep this top of mind right now, you can know when you're scheduling the rest of your time exactly what needs to be done, so you actually in advance can properly plan and prepare for it. So this is why it's vital in there. Put everything from events that you need to attend, but maybe it's your partner's birthday, maybe you have one of your kids' sporting activities that you need to attend. Maybe there's a big project that you need to remember is coming up. Anything that you feel like is a priority that you need to be aware of. Then from there, moving on, it's all about thinking, what are your top priorities this month? What is it that you need to get completed? Maybe there's a campaign that you're working on. Maybe there's a project that needs to be finalized. Maybe you need to hire a new position to join your team. For example, with myself, things to be completed, there might be writing for my book, there might be videos that need to be recorded, there might be various campaigns I need to execute on. So it's thinking about what are the things that are going to be the biggest priority that as long as they get done, that month is going to be a success. From there, on more of a broken down level, what is on your radar? If you think about it, kind of in one of those fighter pilots or as kind of boats and ships where they have a radar out at sea, picking up all of these things that they need to be aware of, I want you to think of your radar as exactly the same. These are the items that need to keep top of mind, but aren't a huge, massive priority right now. So for instance, it might be creating a new series of content. It might be we're starting work on a new project that's coming up in the future. It might be preparing for an event. All of the things that you don't want to forget about. So by writing them down, you can make sure every time you're reflecting on this, you remember and you don't have to waste loads of time and energy or risk forgetting about it and leaving it to the last minute. The next is thinking about, what do you need to study? Like, I'm all about constantly finding ways to grow and develop. I believe if we're not pushing ourselves to learn new things, that's when we start to really fade away and fall short of our potential. Because regardless of the point that you're at in your life right now, there's always going to be new things to learn, new things to help you grow and develop. And this is why I make sure every single month I set aside priorities of what do I need to study and focus. Is it something on mindset? Is it something on business, marketing, leadership, sales? Whatever it is you feel like you need to dedicate some time to study for, put it in there. Are there books that you want to read? Is there a course that you want to take part in? Whatever it is, write it down. So again, it's keeping these things top of mind so that you know where your focus needs to go. And then the final thing on this page are, what are your targets for this month? If you're running a business, what are your financial targets that you need to hit? How many sales do you want to make? How many new leads do you want to generate? What members of your team do you need to hire? What campaigns do you need to execute? Think about what are the tasks and objectives that you need to hit this month that are going to allow you to look back and be like, do you know what? I hit my goals and targets, and this month was a success. So, like I said, this is one of those things, don't need to overcomplicate it, but it's all about giving you that bird's eye view on a macro level that this is what I need to get done this month. These are the other kind of events I have coming up, and this is what I need to keep top of mind. So it's keeping you in that high performance state of mind so that you know not just what you're focusing on, but what could potentially get in your way or come up or throw you off course that you can avoid by thinking about it now. So from there, it's all about moving on to your week. Now, the first thing that I do when I look at my week overview is I'll scroll to the right and I'll look at my schedule on the whole. So from here, what I'll then fill in is, what regular meetings do I potentially have? So I want you to think about, is there a regular kind of meeting with your team that you have every Monday at 9 a.m. that you need to put in there? Is there a regular client session that you have? Put in and fill out all of the regular events so that you know exactly where they are and what's going to be fitted in there to make it that you actually are able to show up and know what you need to get done. Then from there, do you want to know the secret to actually getting work-life balance? The next thing I want you to do before you book in any other kind of meeting or call or project or anything else is I want you to think about what are the non-negotiable parts of your life? What is important to you? And I want you to book it in right then. So for me personally, if I was going through this, I every I like to go to the gym and weight lift 5 days a week. It's generally on a Saturday and Sunday, and then I'll also go on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I go at 11 a.m. every single one of those days. So I'll book in on here gym time. So I need an hour or 30 minutes before, I know that, and 30 minutes afterwards. So I block off that time in my calendar and I know that that's there. So if you then copy that across to all of the other days that you want it at, you know that that time is from there blocked off and nothing else can be scheduled in. And the reason why this is so important is that you have to start treating these other areas of your life as non-negotiable. Book them in there the same way as you would a meeting with your most important client. By doing that, you know that you're not going to cancel. Because if we're really honest, if we just leave them, they just get forgotten about. They go to the back of the priority list, and then we reach the end of the day, and it becomes one of those things like, oh, I should have gone to the gym today, but I ran out of time. I should have had dinner with my family, but I fell behind. I should have had date night with my partner, but I had too much to get done. This is the trap that people fall into because they don't schedule and plan it first before anything else. So look at your week in advance and think maybe you've got an activity or an event that you need to attend with your kids or your partner. Maybe you want to set aside time for yourself to exercise, to take a break, to get out there, to enjoy life. Book all of those things in first and they become non-negotiable. And with this, you may not be able to do this straight away. It may take a couple of weeks of doing this before your calendar frees up. But you can then, if you have regular periods where you have this blocked in, you can approach it in a way that you block off the rest of your calendar so nothing else can ever get blocked in there. As an example, with one of my clients, he will then, on a Wednesday afternoon, he likes to take the afternoon off so he can go do something for himself. So he's got this blocked in here from 3 p.m. Nothing else gets blocked in there because it's time for him to go and do something that he enjoys. And because of it, it's non-negotiable. It's in the calendar and it's accounted for. Another kind of tip that I can give you that I effectively use myself is on these days where I know that I have something on, for instance, going to the gym that's going to take 2 hours of my day. I use this as a push, what I call a push day, where I get up earlier. So on my push days, I get up at 7 a.m. and I start my workday by 7:30 after I've done my morning routine, got some coffee, done some stretching, and got myself into the right headspace. I'm able to start working by 7:30 a.m. On my days where I'm not going to the gym, on a Monday and a Thursday, I use that as a pool day, essentially pulling it back and allowing myself to get a little bit more sleep. So on those days, I'll sleep until 8 and I'll aim to start my day by 8:30. The reason why I find this so effective for myself is if I get up early every single day of the week, I find myself by Thursday, Friday, feeling really tired and not being as focused or as effective as I need to be. And that's why I break my days down where I'll have a pool day back where I can sleep in and get into the right state. I'll have 2 push days where I get up earlier and I'm really productive and everything else that needs to get done. I'll have a pool day to break it down and then a final push day. This is something, again, I recommend testing for yourself. You might not need that. You might want to structure it in a different way. It's all about figuring out what you need to get done that's going to be most effective for you. So once that's blocked in, and again, this is something that as you do this regularly, this will have already been filled out in many ways for itself with your regular appointments. Then it's all about looking at what are your biggest priorities for the week. So if you go back to your month, you can copy across the things that need to get completed. You can copy across your radar, your studying and your targets, and you can post them in here so that you have an overview when you're breaking down your week of everything that you need to complete. And from there, looking at your priorities and what you want to get done, the way I approach it is I never schedule more than 3 tasks on any one day. Because mentally, if you've got 10 things to do, you're not going to be able to focus and prioritize. And that in itself is a sign that you've got too much on and you need to find a way to delegate and outsource. So it's figuring out what are the top 3 tasks and focus points for that day that are going to allow you to effectively move yourself forward. So I'll break it down and I'll think of what are my 3 big things I need to get done today. Generally, as an example, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll film video content for YouTube and other social media platforms. On Wednesdays and Fridays, I'll do writing for my book. There may also be campaigns that you need to work on, emails that you need to catch up on, important meetings that you need to hold. Put it all in your to-do list of the biggest objectives that need to get done that day. And then from there, also put in your other. So this is ideas from your radar of once or if you get these 3 things done, then from there, you can block it in and you can take a little bit of extra time to start focusing on those other tasks that are going to help you move forward. With myself personally, and again, this is where it's very dependent on the individual of what's going to be the best way to approach this. My days change on a day-to-day basis because with clients, they book in with me on often regular intervals where their schedules change, or I'll have application calls or podcasts popping up in my schedule. So I can't always predict in a week what I'm going to be doing every single day. This is why for me personally, I have to do my planning on a daily basis to really figure out, okay, what is going to be my plan and schedule? And we'll come into that in a moment when we move on to a day-to-day. But for you, it might be a case of you know exactly what needs to be done and you can plan your entire week at a time. So just bear that in mind because, again, it comes down to testing it and figuring out what's going to be most effective for you. So I'll put in there my overview of what are my biggest things to do for that week, giving myself the leniency that that may change a little bit depending on what my schedule looks like and how it fluctuates. Then from there, I'll also figure out, okay, what are my targets for the week? So if I've got this objective of what I want to hit for the month, then what do I need to do in the next 7 days to make sure that it's moving forward? The reason why this is so important is while it's great to have this big vision and idea of what you want to accomplish, we need to break it down in ways that are manageable because that's the only way to track it and assess it and really make sure you're moving forward. So what are your targets for this week? What needs to happen in order for you to feel like you made that next step forward and you were effective in what needed to be done? What are the biggest tasks that need to be completed? And also, what are your top priorities? What needs to get done for clients? What needs to be done internally? What needs to be actually accomplished and completed? Again, what's on your radar? What are the things that you would like to do that are coming up in the future that you want to keep top of mind? And if you get time for, you'll move on to. And finally, what is it you need to study this week? What do you need to read? What do you need to work on for your course? What are the things that you really need to focus on to learn to take yourself to the next level? And then as a final thing that I'll do is I'll go through these questions. Firstly, what will this week feel like? I'll feel like this week will be a success if. So the reason why this is so important is you can put yourself at the end of the week and feel like, okay, if I get this done, it'll have been a successful week. Again, it allows you to know what you need to focus on and how you're going to track and monitor it. Because of that, my biggest focus is going to be what you have to get done. The next question is probably the most important. What challenges do you see coming up? Now, the reason why this is so vital is a lot of the clients I work with, because of all of these fires and these challenges and these never-ending list of demands, they're going through life constantly reacting to the world around them. It's putting out fires, solving problems, and everything else, which keeps them in this stressed and heightened state of mind. Instead, if you start your week by looking at, oh, I've got this big board meeting this day, I've got this difficult conversation with this person this day, you can start proactively thinking about what challenges are you going to have to overcome. You can put yourself in those situations to, going into the next question, figure out how are you going to address them? What are going to be the best plans of attack or passive action that you can take that are really going to allow you to effectively handle them at the best of your ability? Who else do you need to bring into it? What could you do to avoid that challenge altogether? Figure that out now, and you're going to have a far easier time dealing with it as and when it does happen. Then think about, what actions do I need to take this week to show up as my best self? Do you need to make sure that you're implementing the right morning routine? Do you need to be setting aside time for yourself to rest and relax? Do you need to make sure that you're planning and structuring your week? What actions have to be taken consistently that are going to get you to bring out your best self? From there, what do I need to do to remind myself of my goals, myself, and my journey? This is all about, again, keeping that vision in mind, because so often I'll speak to people who will be struggling with motivation. They'll have had this big vision, and all of a sudden they'll be going through the motions. They'll be stressed and resenting what they need to get done because they've forgotten their reason and their purpose of why they need to do it. This is why personally, on my kind of vision board to the side, every single morning I'll take a few moments and I'll go through, what am I aspiring to become? What's my big goal and reason why I'm doing it? I have pictures of my family, my reasonings for why I get up and do this every single morning. I have pictures of what I want to accomplish in my business, the quotes that I want to aspire that give me a motivation. And I also have an ethos and morning formula that go through a mental regime that allow me to set myself up for success. This is all about figuring out something that works for you every single day to start yourself off in a positive and focused state where you know exactly what you're doing and why. And then the final question is, what additional help and support may I need this week? Again, it's kind of going back to this, not trying to do everything on your own. Thinking about, okay, I've got this project on, who from my team do I need to bring into it? Okay, I'm really stressed. Who do I need to speak to unload, to unwind, to get this off my chest? What may I need to do with my kids? Maybe you have a big event coming on and you need to get someone to look after them. Really look on your week as a whole, because from there, you're going to be, again, proactively dealing with it in a way that it's not going to throw you off course. You're not suddenly going to land up in a situation of panicking. What are you going to do about it? Because you've thought about it in advance. So this week's schedule is something that I'll do every Sunday evening. It probably takes me about 20 minutes just to put it together. And by doing so, it massively sets me up for the week ahead, because I know exactly what's coming up. And from there, when everything else fits into it, I'm far more in control of managing my time and what I need to do. From there, what I'll do, and again, this comes down to how you want to approach it, either do this at the end of every single day or do this first thing in the morning. Personally, like I said to you, my calendar with people booking in and things popping up, it makes it difficult to do it the night before because things could completely change. But that may not be the case for you. I find with a lot of clients, what they actually need is the final thing to do every single day is sit down and plan their next day's schedule. Because by doing so, what it does is it gets all of those scattered thoughts out of your head. You put it down in front of you, and then you can go into your evening knowing what you're going to be doing the next day, and without having to stress about it or overthink it or really get caught up in all of these thoughts about what needs to get done. This simple action could do wonders for you, actually being able to switch off, to boost your energy, your sleep, or even just your ability to be present with your family and those around you. So to start with, what I'll do is I'll go back to the week and I'll copy across what I've done for that day. So I've already got my meetings in there scheduled. I've got my gym time. I've got my other focuses that I know have to be done. So it's just, again, a copy and paste system so you can see from there what free time you have. You may then also want to look new at your calendar. Has any new meetings been added? Is there anything else that you have to attend? Block it in there. And from there, you can then put your to-be completed tasks. So maybe it's doing some work on a campaign. Maybe it's some writing that you have to do. Maybe it's work on a client project. What are your big priorities for that day? And also, again, your radar. What are the things you want to keep top of mind? What do you need to study? And what are your targets? And then from there, what I would do is go through my top priority and I'd figure out how much time do I need to do for that. So it might be a case if I know on this day, let's say I'm going to go gym for this time. Let's say I have a client at this time and it's going to take an hour. Let's say later in the day, I have another client there. So I can see from there, this is where my day's kind of structuring itself. What free time do I have available? Well, if I'm going to start my day at 8 a.m. and my top thing to be completed that day is to film a video or to do some writing or to catch up on emails, I can then schedule and block that in. I can be very intentional with my time, saying that between 8 and 9 a.m., this is what I'm going to be focusing on. This is going to be the task that needs to get done. And you can block out and structure your entire day with all of your top priorities. And to take it a step further, what I would do is set an alarm. So if you know at 8 a.m., so actually a better way of saying it is, say you're working on a longer term project, like myself with writing a new book. It's not something that I'm going to complete in an hour. So I will set an alarm from 8, so I know when it's starting, and I'll do it until 8:55. So I have that 55 minutes uninterrupted time to focus on this task. And when that timer goes off, I know it's time to start wrapping up to get prepared for what's next. For you, maybe you need 10 minutes segue. Maybe you need a little bit more of a buffer time to move between tasks. It's all about figuring out what works for you. But by setting that alarm and being completely intentional with your time, it's really going to put you back in control of it. One thing I also like to do for myself is between all of these different tasks, I like to add a 30-minute buffer. So at the end of client sessions, I'll give myself 30 minutes. So whether if the session runs over slightly or whether I just need to take a little bit of time to kind of relax, to get my head back in it, or even if it's a little bit more time to assess what happened. So rather than you're constantly being stressed, bouncing around from one thing to the next, have that buffer in place. So it gives you some leeway so that you're not always panicking about what you need to be moving on to. This is, again, going to give you a little bit of mental headspace. As kind of a bonus as well, one thing I really and massively advise that you add in is at the end of every single task, one of the biggest problems I see people running into is they'll bounce around from one thing to the next. They'll go from that client meeting into that next call, into that responding to emails, into working with that project. They bounce from one thing to the next to the next. And because of it, they're always in this heightened stress state, overwhelmed by everything that needs to be done, because they're barely taking a moment to stop, let alone breathe, to really focus on what needs to be done. And this is why one of the biggest kind of tricks or tips that I can give you is at the end of every single big task, what I want you to do is take 3 to 5 minutes where you detach yourself, you take a moment to stop, close your eyes, take a deep breath into the count of 4 and out to the count of 4, into the count of 4 and out to the count of 4. The reason why we're doing this is when you're in this big meeting or having this client conversation or working on this project, all that does, it keeps you in this racing thought state. You're focused, you're thinking out what needs to be done. You may be stressed and overwhelmed. And what that does is it raises your blood pressure. It puts you into this heightened state of mind where throughout the day, all of this stress stacks on top. And this is why your emotions can get the better of you. It can be why you get overwhelmed, or something that in isolation wouldn't have mattered may set you off. And this is why this breathing technique is something that has been scientifically proven. It's used by doctors and nurses in the NHS, which is the British National Health Service, to use in crisis situations. Because by taking that moment to breathe, what it's going to do is allow you to calm yourself down, to lower your blood pressure. And from there, you can think far more clearly. And then take a moment and think about, what is your next task? What is it that needs to be done? So let's say you have a conversation with one of your team members. Let's say you have a meeting. Mentally take yourself through the task before it happens. Again, it's about being proactive, because rather than just jumping into it and then being faced with all of these fires, you can have a mental game plan of what you want to accomplish. Then from that, think about, okay, what is my intention? What do I really need to focus on that's going to make this time effective? And what is the outcome that I want? And only then, when you've calmed yourself down, you set your intention and you know what you need to do you move on to it. This is one of those things that a lot of people hear and they say, oh, I don't have time to do that, I'm too busy, which in itself is a warning sign of exactly why they need to be doing this. But again, this is one of those things that you'll find that by implementing this in your day-to-day routine, not only will you be less stressed, you'll be far more focused, you'll make better use of your time, and also all of that rushing around, it's exhausting, which is why you might find yourself come 3 p.m. feeling low on energy. Do this breathing technique at the end of every major task to really set your intention and focus, and you're going to find yourself having far more energy for the rest of the day as well. So that's how I then plan and structure my days. I also set aside time in there to study, to read, to make sure that I'm focusing on developing myself. When I have an overview of my entire day mapped out, the final thing that I do is go through these questions to mentally set myself up in the right headspace. Firstly, who do I need to show up as today? Do you want to show up as someone who makes big decisions, who's powerful, who's leads, who's focused? Or do you want to show up as someone who procrastinates, who puts things off, who isn't motivated? By just going through that mental state to figure out and set yourself up for who it is you want to show up as, you're going to see such a big difference in your mental state of mind. And again, this comes back to the morning routine that I use with my clients to really set themselves up in the right headspace so that they're focused and they're in control. The next one is, what are today's top goals and priorities? So you've mapped this out here, you've thought about and you've put into your schedule. But again, it's just going through it consciously to be like, okay, these are the biggest things I need to get done. Then go through and figure out what challenges, situation, or stress do you see yourself facing. Let's say you have a client meeting that may be a difficult conversation. You have a board meeting that is going to be really stressful. By going through it, you can see what challenges you're going to face and how you need to effectively deal with them before they happen. Because when you're running a business and you're always dealing with fires, the easiest way to firefight is to avoid the fires in the first place. And by taking that little bit of time every single morning, you'll be able to preempt the big challenges that you may face and go through how can you deal with them as your best self. I'll give you an example. It may be a case that you need to have a difficult conversation with a member of your team. If you think in advance, okay, what do I need to say? What's the objective that I need to get across? What do I need to make sure that I demonstrate and illustrate to them? Rather than just jumping into the meeting and hoping for the best, you can mentally go through it in advance. And from there, you can also figure out, well, there's probably going to be these ways that they're going to respond to it. Like I did this with a client recently and we broke it down and he said, okay, there's going to be one of 3 ways that they're going to respond. They're either going to say this, this, or this. And by going through it in advance, he could mentally prepare himself so that he knew what he was going to say when they said it. So that rather than being put on the spot and getting frustrated or anxious and overwhelmed or allowing himself to become emotional, he had a mental game plan. So if they responded this way, he had already predetermined how he was going to handle that situation. You'll be amazed by taking a few minutes every single morning to get yourself mentally in the right headspace for it, how much stress you're going to reduce by not having to deal with it in a reactive state of mind. And then the final question is, I'll know today was a great success if at the end of the day I feel, and then whatever that emotion is. It's about tying an emotional response to your end of your day feeling so that you can start visualizing and really feeling what needs to happen for that day to be successful. This is going to allow you to set that intention of knowing what it is you want to accomplish. So there you have how to plan your months, your weeks, and your days. And like I said, this can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but the more you go through it, the easier it becomes. And it's actually fairly quick and simple to do, especially if you've done your month and your week properly, because you'll have all of the data that you can just copy across that allows you to fill all of it in. So moving on from there, the final thing that kind of makes this so important is your weekly review. And this is essential because if we don't regularly review and assess what we're doing, we land up in the cycle where we can just be going through the motions, where we don't really know what we're doing and why, or we have no way of tracking, are you actually hitting your targets? Are you making the best use of your time? And this is why every single Friday, myself and all of my clients, I get them to fill out these questions to really keep on top of what's been going on. The first is a few great things that happened last week. And this is one of the most powerful questions because I find so often with high performers, they have this tendency to focus on the negatives. Like I had a guy recently, I go on a call, we do our sessions on a Friday, and he said to me, oh, it was an awful week. This one thing went wrong and he couldn't stop focusing on it. And yes, he had this big fire that he needed to put out, which actually in hindsight, he dealt with incredibly well. And it was actually more of a win than a loss because he learned a lot from it that was setting him up for the future. But beyond that, when we broke down everything else that happened, he actually had one of the best weeks ever with his business, with a project close with a client, with team members making big strides forward, with all of these other things coming together. He had all of these amazing things happen, but because of this one setback that he was focusing on, he felt like it was a terrible week. And not only that, when you're always focusing on new goals and pushing forward, it can be difficult to think back on all of the things that you accomplished, what actually went right. So this is why it's all about being intentional, to sitting down and figuring out what can you be proud of this week? What were your biggest wins? Not just in business, like great things that happen. It could be you taking time off and spending it with your partner. It could be focusing on your health. Whatever it is, what were your biggest wins for this week? What from there were your biggest struggles? Maybe you had a setback that completely derailed you. Maybe there was a fire that threw you off course. What were the biggest things that went wrong that week? And most importantly, what can you learn from it? Because I'm a big believer that mistakes and setbacks and problems are only a bad thing if you don't learn the lessons from them. Because so often the biggest things that propel us forward are those challenging situations because we learn what to do better. We learn more about ourselves. It puts us down paths that we otherwise wouldn't have found ourselves on. And this is why it's vital to take all of those struggles and make sure that you're actively setting aside time to learn the lessons that are going to set you up for the future. From there, if you mentored someone going through the same struggles, what would you tell them? This is about getting you into that mindset of coaching yourself because outside feedback is so important. And if you don't have a coach or someone in your corner that you can bounce around ideas, that could be that sounding board, it may be a case of you sitting down and figuring out, okay, if I was to take a step back and I saw someone else having this problem, what would I advise them on? How would I coach them through it? What would I get them to think about? Sometimes that's all we need to do to dissect and break down problems to be able to deal with them more effectively. From there, what did you learn about yourself this week? What did surprised you? What new skills did you have? What did you realize is something you need to be focusing on? What did you learn about your team, about life? What's helped you grow and see a new perspective? Again, putting it down and reflecting on it is going to start making it real because otherwise you may overlook a massive lesson that you had that you actually didn't realize. And finally, what was one decision I could have made differently last week? What could you have done that would have made it a far more effective week? What should have been done differently? What do you need to learn so that you can do it in the future? Then rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel about your health? Did you make time to exercise this week? Did you eat properly? Did you make time to sleep? How do you feel about your mental and emotional well-being? Did you find yourself this week feeling really focused and in control and positive, or were you on an emotional roller coaster? Did you find yourself firing from the hip, feeling anxious and overwhelmed? By rating yourself, you can realize, okay, this is something that I really need to get help and support on. This is an area that is holding me back. What about your productivity? Like, be honest, on a scale of 1 to 10, how focused were you in actually getting things done? What about financial? Did you hit your financial targets of what you wanted to do? Did you make time to learn and grow and study? What about your relationships? Did you set aside time for date night? Did you go to that activity with your kids where you switched off in the evening? Or did you find yourself coming home and even though you were there, you were checked out? You weren't really present. You were thinking about work and not really in the moment. How would you honestly rate yourself? Because again, by focusing on this now, you can start seeing these areas and correlations in life of what you need to be focusing on in the future. And then the final one is, what about happiness? Because so often we get caught up thinking about what we're doing in business and our goals and our targets, and we're pushing towards these huge, big goals. But while that's important, if you're not happy and you're not enjoying life, does it really matter? And this is why I think it's so important to constantly be auditing how we feel mentally and emotionally. What are we actually focusing on and what's giving us that fulfillment in life? Because one of the biggest lessons that I learned from my dad's cancer, looking back, is at the time he had this really successful career and he was doing all of these amazing things. But then he landed up getting cancer and having most of his bowel surgically removed. And he spent 25 days in ICU, most of that on life support and breathing through a tracheostomy. And luckily, he pulled through. And that's something that I'm eternally grateful for every single day. But it was only when I went on my own journey and I started learning everything I could about mindset and psychology and health and high performance that I started to realize how much his success contributed to him getting sick. As at the time, he was working 14-hour days. He was barely sleeping. His diet was basically just sugar and processed foods. He had no work-life balance. He wasn't looking after himself. And he had so much stress and pressure on himself to perform and deliver. And inevitably, it took its toll. And it played such a big factor in him getting sick. And that was what started my mission to help CEOs and visionary leaders handle what I call the shadow side of success. It's the side of success that so often gets overlooked, yet can push people to their limit. And it's why I set out to help other people get those mental and emotional challenges under control so they can avoid going through what happened to him. And this is why I believe it's so important that we do this rating system on a regular basis, because there may be something in your life that's pulling you down that you don't even realize. Because if your relationship isn't in a good place, regardless of how well your business is doing, that's going to cause external stress that you're going to take with you into your work that's going to stop you from performing at your best. On the other side of that, if you're massively stressed out and overwhelmed, it's going to stop you from showing up as the leader that you need to be in your business, as the person that you need to be in your relationship. If you're constantly exhausted and you have no energy and you're not looking after your health, that's going to affect every area of your life. And this is why it's so important to do this audit on a regular basis so that you can be like, do you know what? This area isn't where I want it to be, and you need to focus on it. And one of the big important lessons to take away from this is not about dwelling on the past. If you come in, you're like, oh, my relationship is a 2, my health is a 3 right now. You can't change that. There's no point beating yourself up or dwelling on it. The past is the past. Instead, though, what you can do is make a decision right here and now that, do you know what? I need to prioritize this area of my life. Like with myself, I said to you, I like going to the gym 3 times a week during the workday because it helps me de-stress. It's something for myself and it keeps me energized and productive in other areas of my life. And I know if I don't do it, I don't feel as good and I'm not as effective and focused as I need to be. So it's making that decision, okay, this is something that needs to be a top priority. I need to schedule it in, whatever it is, and it becomes non-negotiable. The final two questions are, what big projects and dreams did I move forward this week? So what is the big vision that you're working towards? What's really pushed you forward and helped you grow and actually harness that ability and making sure you're making the best use of your time? And finally, any other lessons or notes? What are your other big takeaways from this week that you need to learn from that are going to help push you forward? By doing this at the end of every single week, you're going to be far more focused and in the zone, knowing what you have to then take into the next week and what's going to be your big focus and priority. So there you have it. You now know how to effectively plan your days, weeks, and months to set yourself up for success. And if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about in this training, feel free to drop me a message and I'll be able to give you some more personalized advice. As with anything, though, it's also really important to remember that this is just one piece of the puzzle. Yes, planning and structure and everything else is undoubtedly important, but it's also pretty meaningless if you don't follow through with it. And this is why I see so many CEOs and visionary leaders getting stuck, because they know what they should be doing, yet they land up in a situation where they're not doing it. So often people reach out to me at a point where they're running their business, and between the putting out fires, solving other people's problems, and dealing with a never-ending list of demands, they find themselves nowhere near as effective as they need to be, because all of the stress and pressure is causing them to spend their days on this roller coaster ride of emotions where they're anxious and overwhelmed about all of these problems that they need to solve. And they land up in this cloudy mental chaos where they're unfocused, they don't know what to prioritize, they overthink, land up in a state of analysis paralysis where they're doubting themselves and second guessing what they're doing. And instead of doing the things that they know that they need to do, they procrastinate and put it off. And if that sounds like the situation that you're in right now, I want you to know it's not your fault. There's actually a reason why this is going on. And I want to take a moment to explain it to you. And to do that, I want you to think of your old laptop computer. Remember how when you got it, it worked perfectly well. It was fast, it could handle everything that you needed to do. Yet after a while, didn't it start to slow down? It had difficulty managing multiple different tasks at any one time. Its memory wasn't as good as it used to be. And when you put too much stress or pressure on it to do all these different things, it would crash and stop working. Well, what most people don't realize is our brains work in exactly the same way. We all have this internal operating system, which directly impacts the way that we think, feel, and our ability to show up and be effective. And this is why so many CEOs and visionary leaders find themselves struggling, because while their current level of programming got them to the point that they're at today, all of a sudden they find themselves in a situation where they now have to lead and manage a team. They have to overlook day-to-day operations. They have to keep stakeholders happy. They need to continue focusing on growth. And because of it, they're putting all of this extra strain on their internal operating system. Whereas the problem is, with every new level of stress comes a new level of problems. So like that laptop computer, they're struggling to function, they're struggling to process it all, and they're struggling to take the actions that they need to take. So what's the solution? Well, like the laptop computer, they need to upgrade their internal operating system to evolve so that they can handle these new levels of problems. After all, the level of thinking, action, and brain power that got you to where you are today isn't going to get you to where you want to be tomorrow. So what would your life and business look like if, instead of being stressed and overwhelmed on this roller coaster ride of ups and downs, you could actually control your emotions? So whenever you're faced with those fires, those challenges and setbacks, your emotions don't take over, cause you to react and get the better of you. What if, instead of being in a state of analysis paralysis, overthinking and struggling to make decisions, you had the clear-headed focus to know exactly what needed to be done and the confidence to execute without overthinking? What if you had that unstoppable belief within yourself that you could show up every single day to take the actions that you need to take to create the success that you want? How much would they impact not just your business, but your life and your feelings about yourself? Well, if beyond this training, you're ready to take yourself to the next level, to tap into your full potential, I'd love to take a moment to talk to you about how I can help you going forward. Because what I've developed over the last few years is my Evolve program, where I help CEOs and visionary leaders upgrade their brain power and their internal operating system so that they can handle the shadow side of success and take back control of the mental and emotional challenges that come with growing and running a business and tap into their full potential. In 90 days, I can help you up level your way of thinking and open up new thought pathways that give you the clear headed focus to make better decisions, the confidence to execute without overthinking, and the mental and emotional control to handle new levels of stress and pressure without crumbling or losing your composure. Together, we're going to upgrade your brain's internal operating system as you tap into your full potential. By the end, you'll be turning off overwhelm levers, breezing through old stress triggers, and performing at levels that you never even imagined possible, giving you the mental ability to take your life, your business, and yourself to the next level. And I'm also going to be there every step of the way, guiding and supporting you and really being a sounding board to help you deal with the challenges that you're facing. Because so often with the clients that I work with in running their business and managing their team, they feel like they have to keep it all together. So even though they have these big challenges and setbacks on a day-to-day basis, they don't want other people to see that they may be struggling. So they bottle it up and they internalize how they feel, putting on a facade and act to the outside world because they don't want people to know what's actually going on with them. That's why I believe it's so important to have external counsel, because I'm going to be able to create a safe and judgment-free zone where that's disconnected from your business, that you can actually come and get the help and support that you need, where you can bounce around ideas, you can talk about challenges that you're having, you can vent and open up. I'm going to be that person who's in your corner so that you don't have to get into the ring alone, giving you the help and support that you need to really become an effective leader. And I believe this is so important, because if you look at any big CEO, president, athlete, or high performer, what's the one thing that every single one of them has in common? They surround themselves with the right help and support, because they know that you need someone else to bring out the best in you, that you can't do everything on your own. And that's why I'm going to be there, really helping you evolve as you push yourself to new heights that you never even realized were possible. So if you're ready to take yourself to the next level, to evolve into a more effective decision-making leader who can handle all of the challenges that come with growing a business, then what I want to do is invite you to book a call directly with me. We'll take 30 minutes and have a friendly conversation about where you're at right now and where it is you want to get to, and figure out what needs to happen in order to close the gap, to put you back in control of the mental and emotional challenges that come with running your business. And if at the end of all of that, I'm certain I can help and we both think it's the right fit, then we can talk about what working together could potentially look like. And if not, then I'll point you in the right direction. So either way, you're going to be one step closer towards where you're meant to be. So if that sounds like it might be for you, you can book that call using the button below this video. So on a final note, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for checking out this training. I hope this has given you a ton of value and insights into what it really takes to plan and structure and set yourself up for success. And like I said earlier, with the spreadsheet I used in this video, you can download a blank copy directly below to really start using for yourself. And I really advise that you take some time to test this, to figure out what works for you. So I just want to say thank you for watching this video. I've been Byron Morrison, and if you're ready to take yourself, your life, and your business to the next level as you evolve into a more effective decision-making leader who can handle all of the stress and pressure that comes along with running and growing a business, then you can book that call directly with me to see whether or not working together is the right fit to help you tap into your full potential. And you can book that call using the button directly below. I've been Byron Morrison. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.